Good morning, everyone. I request all of you to settle down. My name is Jonathan Sharna, and we are delighted to have all of you here today. As you know, today we are having a seminar on the topic In Pursuit of a Better Political Culture in Bangladesh's Democratic Transition, arranged by Dhaka Tribune, along with the support of the Royal Norwegian Embassy in Dhaka. Firstly, we'd like to express our gratitude to all the participants. Today, as our special guest, we have Dr. Rounaq Jahan, eminent political scientist and distinguished fellow at the Center for Policy Dialogue. Then we have Håkon Arald Gulbrandsen, ambassador of the Royal Norwegian Embassy in Dhaka. As panelist, we have Dr. Mirza M. Hassan, advisor, BRAC Institute of Governance and Development. Dr. Zahed Rahman, political analyst. Barrister Shishir Monir, political commentator and member of Jamaat-e-Islami Bangladesh. Dr. Asif M. Shahan, professor, University of Dhaka. Mohammad Asaduzzaman, research director. Zyma Islam, senior reporter of the Daily Star. At the starting, I request our special guest, Mr. Håkon Arald Gulbrandsen, ambassador of the Royal Norwegian Embassy, to come to the podium and begin the discussion with an opening speech.
Thank you, and Shubo Shukal, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you all to this seminar titled In Pursuit of a Better Political Culture in Bangladesh's Democratic Transition. We, the Norwegian Embassy in Dhaka, have been supporting such seminars and workshops for years now. And the enthusiasm and the feedback from these events are quite encouraging. Bangladesh has seen a watershed moment in its political history last year. And ever since, the country is on its way to a democratic transition. Experts have researched and outlined the structural deficiencies that the Bangladeshi state and its system had. And a lot of reform discussions has been taking place in the public discourse and within the political circles. The commission set up by the interim government came up with recommendation after their rigorous exercises, and the final work to conclude the reform proposal and initiate the reform process is being done under the auspices of the National Consensus Commission, chaired by the chief advisor himself. Some reforms in the forms of amendment of some laws and procedures have already been made by the interim government, sometimes by issuing ordinances. Now the onus will be on the next elected parliament to carry out the reforms mentioned in the July Charter and also ratify the ordinances issued by the government. However, beyond the structural reforms, there is another thing without which a lot of painstaking reforms might go in vain. That is political culture. Without a good political culture, some politicians will find a way around checks and balances and repeat the past authoritarian tendencies, constant confrontational politics, violence, political oppression, poor governance, and corruption. Hence, it's also important to talk about the decent rules of the games of politics and better political culture. From my Norwegian experience, and as a politician myself at my young age, I can easily vouch for a better political culture that upholds the spirit of democracy, enlightening discussions and debates, peaceful handover of power, peaceful protest, and paying heed to the concerns of people on the streets and otherwise. In Norway, during an election, sometimes competing candidates campaign from the same stage, and maintain a friendly relationship with political competitors, because politics is not personal. It's public service after all. The winner taking everything is a lingering problem in Bangladesh. This is also not about the structure alone. A better political culture can help in addressing such realities. Democracy isn't majoritarianism. Rather, diversity and inclusion are essential part of true democratic spirit. Bangladesh has immense prospects. Social and political stability is imperative to realize Bangladesh's full potential. And a better political culture will always increase Bangladesh's chances. I'm looking forward to listening to some of the interesting discussion here in this seminar today, and thank you all for your patient listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your kind words. Now I will hand over the floor to our moderator to begin the discussion session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, and my special thanks to Ambassador Håkon for, in your brief welcome speech, you have already, I think, set the tone for the seminar today. At the very outset, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to everyone for joining us this morning at our invitation for this seminar. We have arranged today's seminar as part of a series of events jointly organized by the Embassy of Norway in Dhaka and Dhaka Tribune over the years. The theme of today's seminar may sound a bit heavy to some superficials or to some extent fluid in pursuit of a better political culture in Bangladesh democratic transition. But more than a year after the July revolution, as the entire nation looks forward to a fair national election, we feel that now is the best time to say that the people of this country deserve a functioning democracy. And that's why the first thing we need to do is learn from the mistakes of the past and create an atmosphere that fosters a healthy political culture. It is certainly not a matter of any one particular period or of one party's rule over another. It runs much deeper than that. It is about practicing a culture rooted in democratic ethos. A winner takes all attitude, little room or no room for dissenting views, political acrimony, intolerance, mutual mistrust have long been key features of Bangladesh's political culture. We want to move away from past practices that have not helped us much in fulfilling our democratic aspirations. We would like to receive your discussions and suggestions today as a roadmap for building a better democratic political culture in this country. So now I'll move to the today's respected panelists who are sitting on both sides, both sides, and I will go and seek their views and opinion one by one before I open the forum for all of you. And this is not necessarily that a one-way traffic. It would be a two-way traffic. We will be, some people will be, panelists will be speaking from here very briefly, and we want to hear as many as possible from people sitting in front of us. Actually, we want to make best use of our next around 2 hours time, so that we can actually draw some sort of conclusion where we can say that as the country proceeds to a new election, to a new democratic path, we can expect some changes in our political behavior system. So first I will ask Dr. Right beside me, Dr. Mirza M. Hassan, who is an advisor of the BIGD. So now the question is, before today, before we discuss anything else, how can actually we help promote the practice of a better political culture, and what actions can be taken to that aim?
Yeah, thank you. You can hear me. And I'm going to skip all the formalities of addressing this person, that person, so I can best utilize my time, which is roughly around 10 minutes. You see, I was talking to Professor Rounaq Jahan a little while ago and asking a lot of other people actually, what is the political culture? It's so fluid, so woolly concept. It's very difficult to pin it down in a rigorous fashion. As an academic, we always try to do that. Now, it has a long history in the academic world. Back in the 50s, there's an academic idea of civic culture, came from the modernization theorists. And Professor Rounaq Jahan was telling me that she had to read and use while she was a grad student. And then, essentially, it's about liberal values and individualist values, and also capitalist values in terms of possessive liberalism, okay, property rights and so on. Libertarian values also, yet, I is important, society is not important, and so on. And then in the 90s, people talked about the zeitgeist of the time was social capital, reinvented by a person named Putnam. And the social capital became the Bible, the everything. In the World Bank, IMF, down to any academics, they started using it, abusing it a lot, and trying to even, to make it amenable to project evaluation and so on. So essentially, that idea is norms comes first, and norms will dictate other thing. If you don't have good norms in a society, then you are doomed. So the North Italian, they have good norms to start with, mysteriously, maybe divine ordained. It came to them, but not in the Southern Italy. The Southern Italy was doomed with the mafia culture and everything. The North became industrialized, modern, and so on. So that's one of the way of interpreting history. And then, the notion of political culture, interestingly, it came up again in 2018 with the book coming up. There are other books before, but that became the bestseller, an academic book written by two professors of Harvard University Political Science Department. They wrote a book called How Democracy Dies. And you can get the book even in the airport. So you can understand the impact of the book. And they brought it back, and I'm going to come to that. But the first time, I think one of the relevant questions for Bangladesh at this stage is democratic transition. How come we don't have democracy in this country? And after 54 years, we have to try again. We have to reinvent this, what is it called? It's the cycle. And with such bloody, events like the most recent uprising, the popular uprising, and so on. There was a guy named Dankat Rasto, a political theorist. The best of my knowledge, he brought the idea of culture and norm into democratic transition back in he wrote his article probably in the 70s. And that's the beginning of transitology, meaning the democratic transition literature. And he said that what we need for democracy, for democratic consolidation, that country will have a stable, consolidated democracy, where we will have a good culture, and where we, like Norway, we will shake hands, politicians will shake hands and everything. That's only possible after some trial and error. Once the democratic process is on, then they will interact with each other, and a phase will come. So they will leave the conflicting culture, and they will habituate themselves to democratic culture, what he called democratic habituation phase. And if you don't arrive at the habituation phase, then you're doomed again. You won't have any democracy, okay? So the norm began, again, the first thing, as a causal determinant, okay? And as I said, Professor Levitsky and Professor Ziblatt, They talked about norm, and they said the reason that we have Trump, and the 2016 Trump election was a massive shocker, that America is not an exceptional country. It's also vulnerable to authoritarianism, and now they're talking about fascism coming back. It's the Hitler moment, as the scholars are talking about in the US. They say that you have to have norms, what they call the norm, must not erode. So norm erosion is the problem. If the political elites, they don't have a common norm, all people believing in certain norm and respecting it, otherwise you won't have democracy, like what we are seeing in the US at this moment. And they identify two things. One is mutual tolerance, that people will tolerate each other, the political actors. And remember, these are all political elite-centric analyses. Citizens are nowhere in this discussion, in this discourse. Okay? They are least important. And then you have, আমাকে time take to বলবেন, আমি fast move করব.
Yeah, please.
Okay. So the mutual tolerance and institutional forbearance. These are the two keywords that they use. What is mutual tolerance? That's, it's clear that you need to tolerate each other. Others' view, we have to live with others' view, and we can sort it out in a friendly manner in bargaining and discussion and so on. You can see a bit of that in our reform deliberation that's going on, not much of mutual toleration, the position that we have arrived right now. And then the institutional forbearance, meaning, okay, fine, rules says this, constitution says this, okay, but I'm going to relax for the sake of friendliness, for the sake of, to avoid conflict in a democracy, because we need to do that, the toleration. So the forbearance is there, relaxing a little bit, I'm going to ignore a bit, this and that, and so on. Now, the problem with Levitsky and Ziblatt is that, to give an example, let me make it very concrete. They bemoan the fact that there was a time the elites of the US politics, they used to decide in the back room what they call the smoke-filled room. This is a very pejorative way of describing things. That the elite, close elite, they decided who is going to be the nominee for the president election. Okay? Now, in the 70s, I think they changed the rule, thanks to student movement, thanks to democratic movement, and so on. They had to open it up. So now the people, they vote. So thousands of people will vote. It's a long process, and so on. And now, you can use your Facebook to steer people from this idea to that idea. And they thought that was a disaster. Think about it. It's a very conservative elitist position, that people shouldn't have been given the power to nominate the president's candidate. It should have been like what was there back in the earlier 70s and so on. So if you make it too democratic, too open up, then those elite norms will be diluted, and you will see Donald Trump. So let's go back to the older elite control norms. So this is very conservative position. Now, in the case of Bangladesh, if you can think, there are norms, as if we don't have any norms, but we do have norms with the political elites. And those norms could be legal bad norm and illegal bad norm. For the legal bad norm, duty-free car. Think about it. All politicians agreed there was a normative consensus. We can do it. Who cares about discrimination and all this kind of thing? And there was the article for whitening black money. And I can go on and on. These are legal. Okay? It was passed in the parliament. No one could have challenged, but these are bad norms. And the political elites can collude with bad norms. So norms are not always good. Norms can be bad. And there is another bad norm, which are illegal bad norms. Like, once you are in power, you can politicize police, you can take the administration, you can take the judiciary. I am not going to protest. But when I'm back, allow me to do that. And they had a perfect consensus on that. That's illegal, because you are against meritocracy. But they agreed. there's no problem. Okay, there is no breakdown of democracy, so-called democracy in Bangladesh during 1991 to 2006 or sort of, okay, when you have caretaker government and so on. So they could come with, so the norms are problematic. The point I'm trying to say is this, that we need to be very careful about what kind of norms are we talking about. Is it sufficiently democratic? Are citizens, especially the underprivileged citizens, the poor people, are their expectation being accounted for or not? Or is it a very exclusive elite norm or not? Okay? In Bangladesh and in the US too, that elite-dominated control norm has broken down. Now we are seeing all this chaos, all this uncertainty, and so on. In Bangladesh, we couldn't even develop it for a very, very long time. Okay. In 2 minutes? Yeah. Give me 2 minutes. I'm done. Yes. So last point, I have more points. I can come back later about especially what can be done. I can come back later on that. But I want to finish it that the reason that norms didn't develop in Bangladesh among the political elite, because there is no electoral rules of the game acceptable to both sides of the aisle, in all political elites. And the reason that we couldn't sustain our electoral democracy because our politicians, entire political class, couldn't accept the fact that election and electoral politics is uncertain game. You don't know who's going to lose or not. They hate it. And that's why we saw all this manipulation with the caretaker government and the end of the caretaker government and so on. Started with BNP. Finally, the funeral was presided by the Awami League on the death of that. So both parties are to blame. And let me give you just one anecdote and I'll finish. Back in 1999, I interviewed the deputy speaker at the time from the Awami League. He told me, are you talking about democracy in Bangladesh and tolerance and all those? It's not possible. I'm sitting in the parliament, presiding the parliament, and the prime minister is sending me notes, chirkut, saying that give 2 minutes to that person, 1 minute to that person, and give 10 minutes to my person there, sitting there. And she was dictating me from there. So how can you have democracy? I leave it here.
Thank you, Dr. Mirza. I'm Hassan. Actually, we are listening to you with rapt attention, but we'll come back to you if time permits. But at this point, I will move to Professor Asif M. Shahan, who teaches development studies at University of Dhaka. I like to ask Professor Shahan that who actually benefits from the current political culture that are we having in this country? And who would be the best served by a better political culture? Can the new political settlement that we are talking about encourage a better political culture?
Thank you. Thanks a lot for inviting me, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about that. Let me just go directly to the point. To be very honest, I don't know, and I'm not sure what good political culture is or what bad political culture is, and whether we can actually define political culture in any systematic way. The political scientists have tried to do that several times. In some cases, there was the concept of civic culture, and at the same time, there is an issue of measurement that, when we talk about good or bad, it's also about measuring. So there is subjective understanding, and when that subjective understanding eventually transfers into an objective understanding, that creates a lot of confusion to that point. So essentially, I'll just focus on this particular issue, that when we talk about political culture, if I just try to define it in a simplest way, and I don't necessarily like to take a normative stance that something is good or something is bad, because I really do not think that, if you really try to study something scientifically, that normative stance not necessarily helpful. We need to just understand what it is and how it is. So essentially, when we talk about political culture, it's kind of the aggregate patterns of understanding, orientation about a particular political system, that how the actors who are working within a political system perceive that system, and how they want to use it. And when we talk about actors, so there are, of course, the citizens, there are, of course, the interest groups, there are, of course, the political actors or the political parties. And I just want to focus on the political party actors, the political leaders. I don't necessarily go into citizens. Those are very important issues, but since I have to limit my discussion, I specifically want to focus on the political parties and political actors. So if you consider it, and when we talk about in a large scale the political culture of Bangladesh, what I'm trying to say here, that what we need to see is, what the political parties who came into power or will come into power, or the opposition parties who are not necessarily coming into power but waiting for their turn, what is their perception or their idea about the political structure? What do they think about it? And whether they think that it is essentially provide enough opportunities for them to participate, it is providing enough opportunities for them to centralize power, to consolidate power, and how they're trying to utilize that. So from my perspective, I always consider the political parties as a rational actor. So as a rational actor who will try to maximize their benefit, and the culture I consider is something that is trying to create some sort of binding or boundary that will try to create some sort of check over their behavior. Considering that, I always find it very difficult to believe that when someone says, we need to change, how can we change this political culture? I mean, if the political culture is more about consolidation of power, centralization of power, the winner takes all, the party finance and others, if we try to sort of define the political culture, that is how the political actors perceive the system in that way, and then we come to the conclusion the whole thing can be changed if we can get better people, if we, good people come into politics, if we get honest politicians, and when someone makes that kind of argument, I find it very difficult to buy. I don't buy that. It's not possible that one sudden morning, all the political leaders of the countries wake up from sleep and decide, look, we have learned our lesson, we have become good, and let's do politics. We want to work for the national interest. Let's be absolutely clear about it. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen in Bangladesh. That's not going to happen in India, in USA, in Netherlands, anywhere in the world. That's not how things are going to work. And this is why I like this particular statement. I like this particular statement by Popper. Popper made it very clear that the question is not who should rule or who is to have power, but the question is how much power should be granted to government, or perhaps more precisely, how can we develop our political institutions in such a manner that even incompetent and dishonest rulers cannot do too much harm? That's the question. So let's stop our wait for the Godot. Let's stop our wait for the most honest, political party actors, political prime minister, whoever it is. That's not going to happen. Because, again, going back to medicine, men are not angels. And if we are angels, we do not necessarily have a lot of problems that we have. So this is the question. So I think when we talk about the good and bad political culture, this is where I think the role of the institutions matter most to me. So when we are talking about that, creating a system where if you somehow elect the dishonest and incompetent person, the question is what are the constraints that are there within the political system that will force that dishonest and incompetent man to behave in a certain way, whether we have managed to establish that. So this is where the institutions, and when I'm talking about institutions, formal institutions and also sometimes the informal institutions, the norms we sometimes talk about, those also comes into play, but I consider norms as routinization of behavior. When some behavior following rules become normalized, you use it again and again, then it becomes a norm. The problem is when we are talking about Bangladesh, unfortunately, we have not necessarily focused on institution building. That has not been the case in 1991 when we made our first transition to democracy. We essentially consider, and this is another problem, that when we try to define democracy, our basic definition of democracy is only about electoral democracy. If we just have an election, everything is fine. Now, electoral democracy is the minimalist form of democracy. It is essential. It is the minimum thing that we require. But if we really want to consolidate democracy, the so-called good and bad culture or good political culture, if we really want to institutionalize democracy, just having an election will not work, because we have seen that thing in 1991, in 1996, in 2001, even in 2008. We have seen that. When you have the elections, what happens is in between the elections, within those 5 years, there will be a winner takes all. The government will take control, complete control over the public resources, and the opposition will wait, because they know after 5 years we will come into power, and they will take control over the public resources, and the same cycle of corruption, everything will, concentration of power will go on. And what we have also seen, that when we allow these, it eventually the concentration of power becomes so terrible that the parties also try to change the rules of the game. Look, we talk about 2008 and the change of the caretaker government. Let's not forget, this is not the first time we try to change the rules of the game in Bangladesh. We did that in post-2001, which created the crisis of 111. We tried to do that in the past. The thing is, this time, the last government succeeded, which created all the problems. So those weak institutions, the weak institutions of accountability always create this thing. So if we, the question that you ask, that if we really want to transform that, I think the question is about institution building. Because what the institutions will do, it will not necessarily directly change the culture. But what it will do, as I said, quoting Popper, that it will create some change within the existing incentives. If you are a dishonest person, you have an incentive to be dishonest, to engage in public corruption, and you will use the existing rules to use that. If I change the rules, then you have to pause. You have to think. And you have to think again, how can I bypass the rule? So that gives you an opportunity. That's why the institutions are important. That's why the institutions will create that incentive. And that's why I think that the proposals and the actions of the Consensus Commission and the Reform Commissions are so important. We have seen in the context in our country that the oversight institutions did not work. How much time? We have seen in the past the oversight institutions did not work. We have seen the Anti-Corruption Commission has been used by the political parties as a tool to control the activities of the opposition parties. We have seen the Public Service Commission to be used by the political parties to politicize the bureaucracy. Now, if we cannot make these changes right now, because this is not in the interest of any political party to make these changes, because whoever will come into power, if we make those changes, they will lose. This is the perfect moment, the political rupture that we went through. This provides this opportunity to make those changes. So if we make those institutional changes, upper house with the peer, I know that these are some very meta-level changes, but this will eventually create an impact on the political actors' incentive, their behavioral pattern, and they have to think about how can I will behave. So I think that is the way of moving forward. I think I don't have any more time. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Professor Shahan. At this stage, I will ask Asaduzzaman, before asking him the question. Mohammad Asaduzzaman is a research director at Dhaka Institute of Research and Analytics. As I understand, your SWAN is a relatively new, I think it's a post-uprising think tank. And you are trying to develop something, working on this, and researching on Bangladesh political culture and many other things might be. So do you think that the uprising that we had last year itself, or the charters that we came up with, the July Charter and things like that, automatically drive us to a new political culture, or should we have to do something more than that as citizens of this country to actually really go for a better political culture system? Mr. Asaduzzaman.
Hello, thanks Dhaka Tribune to inviting me here. It's a great opportunity, I think, that to share the podium with my teachers here and also my distinguished citizens. So I think it's a very interesting question. So like to be talking about the political cultures in Bangladesh in a post-uprising situation, and also to consider the global context. It's a very difficult position to talk about political culture right now, because you see the in the global scenario, what is going on actually? What is wrong with us? The right-wing politics is rising all over the world, in this part of the world, also in the so-called developed part of the world, or as Trump mentioned, the free part of the world. And like genocides comes handy. Just we are done with a ceasefire in the Palestine side. Now the news comes from Sudan that another genocide is going on, and also the global refugee problems, geopolitical tensions, and many episodes of uprising going on in our neighboring sides, also in Bangladesh, in Indonesia, and other parts of the country, of the world. And also to couple with the increasing inequality and exploitations all over the world. So these are the global situations right now. And so my question is, what sort of influence all these events exert on a political actor, I mean a man, a human being, people, or a citizen in a nation state? So also in Bangladesh, you see, like, why did the July uprising happen actually? There are a lot of context, there are a lot of contributing factor behind it. So I'm not going to details. You know all these things, the so-called bad governance, abuse of power, enforced disappearances, economic crimes, all these things. So you see the characterization of political culture in Bangladesh or in our neighboring countries can be broadly said in terms of the idea of agitation, hatred, sense of betrayal, depravity, grievances, and also the eagerness to use power as coercion, not as to serve the people. So these are the broad features of our political cultures here. As Asif Shahan sir mentioned that there is a very narrow area where we can go, like in subjective, in normative way. But again, whenever peoples comes into questions, the question of subjectivity and normative positions comes into play, as like Mirza Hassan sir also mentioned that there are some problems with the norms. So I would like to pose the question to the audience here, that where do the norms come from? Or where do the like the essences of inspiration comes from? It obviously comes from the people, the practices of people, their culture, their religion, sort of their habituations throughout time. So we are not actually devoid of our cultural practices, our habits, our historical learnings. So whenever you see that, whenever a bad practice is established in our politics, it is very difficult to prevent all these practices. It just goes on and on, goes on and on. So in a situation like this, to give a little bit of context, so our political culture, specifically in Bangladesh, is heavily loaded with political violences based on ideological revenge, ideological grievances, and also it also is loaded with the vested interest. You see, our civil and military bureaucracy. I'd like to call out that particular area. We entrust these specific class with a grave responsibility to spearhead our nation towards the democratic transition and progress. But you see what they did in last few decades with our country, with the people. They actually played with political parties in their vested interest, in the partisan interest. And you see the state of our current economy and also the whole situation of the governance right now. We cannot trust nobody in this country right now. Everybody is confused actually who to rely upon. There is nobody actually. So we cannot, first of all, we cannot trust the political parties. Then we cannot trust the civil and military bureaucracy. Then we cannot trust our oversight institutions. As sir mentioned about the institution building. The question is, are the institutions self-initiating? No. Someone has to initiate all these institutions. Someone has to manage all these organizational structures, systematic structures. So here again comes the question of people. Now I will go to actually what's the way forward. I actually see no alternative to empowering the people in a institutional structure, in institutional practices. And it will take a long time, but we have to continue that. There is no alternative to empowering people. And what are the empowering mechanism actually? The most important empowering mechanism is the education. I think it will not be that much contradiction to say that from the grassroots level to the state level, most of our people are ill-educated. Their inspiration is not right there to strengthen the economic base, to strengthen the cultural base of our country. So education is very important. And you see, like the post-uprising, we could not actually create a education reform commission because of lots of problems. So one of the core reform areas are left untouched. And you know, just I saw the headlines that the position for the like music teacher and physical exercise teacher is just omitted. So these signs are actually alarming. I would like to say that. And already we see that there is a series of harassments and bullying going over in the social media against our female politicians who actually comes into the scene. It was very fortunate for us that there are many female faces coming into the politics, and also it is very unfortunate for us that a lot of female participants who actually would be joining the politics is now disappeared from the scenario because of these social harassments and bullying over the social media. So I would like to say that empowering people is the only key that will create some institutional base in this country, that will create some accountability mechanisms that can be also empowered by the people. Otherwise, if people are not directly connected through these oversight institutional systems, then there will be some elite understanding, elite kind of political settlements, and they will do the rent distribution and all. And again, the same old structure will come and they will exploit us again and again. So I think that's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Asaduzzaman. I would rather take it from there to from your last the last points you mentioned about the female politicians and the bullying and this whole social media ecosystem that's not conducive to that kind of a the more female politicians taking interest into the new political settlement. So in that kind of a scenario, I would now move to Zyma, to you, that you have seen Jamaat-e-Islam, journalist, you have seen these things closely as a reporter at field level, that how actually in our old political settlement things panned up in the, the political culture was more confrontational, and there was antagonism and lots of problem all around. In your opinion, what's the way out? What are some of the ways that you see the political culture evolving now? Is it for better or worse? And how does the gender and societal expectations of men and women influence the political culture?
Thank you so much, Reaz bhai. Reaz bhai is asking a journalist for solutions. When have journalists ever given solutions? The best we can do is diagnose problems and amplify them. But before I move on to, I think, sadder topics, I'd actually like to congratulate everyone in this room, because I don't know if you've noticed, but with BNP publishing their initial draft nomination list, election season has begun, people. And that's exciting. I'm not sure if you're feeling it, but we definitely have felt it in the newsrooms. For journalists, if you ask what our favorite day of the year is, or every 4 years, it would be election day. That's when we truly party. We thrive on democracy, on politics, and it's a feeling. I don't think I'll ever be able to translate it. The feeling of covering an election, the feeling of being excited about watching people exercise their franchise, regardless of the outcome. And so, you know, I, for example, will be voting for the first time in my life in the upcoming elections. I've not been able to vote ever in my life. That right was taken away from me. And so the upcoming elections truly, truly matter a lot. Now, moving on from that, I remember getting a press release sometime in October, towards the beginning of October. It was a compilation by a human rights based organization. They found out that political violence is at a 4-year high. This was supposed to be a democratic renewal. This was supposed to be a year of change. This is a year when our political parties are sitting together in one room, talking about reforms, eating many snacks, but not sitting side by side in one room and talking and not fighting each other. So how is it that out on the streets, political violence was at a 4-year high? Well, you know, listening to everyone speak, I pulled up a few of the figures. 88 people died in intra-party clashes inside the BNP. These were all turf wars. These were not conflicts over ideologies. This is just basic turf war. 88 people, I mean, that's just 12 short of 100. And anyone who belongs to BNP in this room or who's aligned with BNP, I'd like to challenge you to name all 88 of them. It's not just a figure. These were 88 lives lost. This is a problem. We just don't acknowledge it. Similarly, 34 people died in BNP and Awami League clashes. I'm guessing these were mostly retaliatory violence. Awami League, despite not being anywhere in the political field, still managed to kill 12 of their own. So that's your 4-year high. One member of Jamaat-e-Islami also, no, sorry, 3 politicians belonging to Jamaat-e-Islami died. They died in inter-party clashes with BNP and Awami League. And, you know, these stories get lost. These are stories that we often don't even push to print. These are stories that stay digitally. These are the stories which we jokingly call one killed, two died, because like that's all there is to it. We don't really know deeper than that. But then when you take these stories at scale, you realize that in this year of renewal, we saw such a large scale of violence. I don't see that stopping with the election season gearing on. As the turf war increases, I don't think that the political violence will be seeing a decline anytime soon. And that's precisely, I think, what we have been trying to change here, because we have more in common between us than our differences. Truly, when you look at our political parties, I mean, unless you're going way to the left or like way to the right, both of which are truly fringe in our in terms of relevance in our political scenario. What are the ideological differences in our major parties? There are very few when you think about it in a certain way. Yes, of course, political democracy thrives on being confrontational. It thrives when the politicians are the only way politicians can stay relevant is if they can prove that the other person is less than. But at the same time, there's way more in common between our major parties than the differences. When you go down to grassroots level politics, of course, you know, putting aside the people killing others, people killing other people, we do have a very healthy culture of tolerance among grassroots level politicians. I was speaking to a friend of mine who is still aligned with Awami League politics, and I was checking in on him and I was asking him how he's doing. He lives in a district towards the north, and he said that it's so far so good. People that he and his allies, his companions had sheltered during the Awami League's regime of oppression, of extreme oppression, they're the ones sheltering him now. He said that, you know, throughout the years, anytime the police came to the area, we told them to flee, or we gave them shelter, we hid them, and now they're returning those favors. If the police try to harass us, they come and then they come and save us. So we've always had a state which is very repressive. And then when you go down to the grassroots, you see people helping each other. You see people helping other people. So this means that there is a sort of trust that already exists that just needs to be built on. And that, I think, should be the way forward as we go on from here. Shishir Bhai and I probably differ a little politically, just a little, but we're neighbors, and throughout the years of political repression of Jamaat-e-Islami, I have the deepest respect for him, and I think we've worked for years on topics like abolishing the death penalty. We've worked for years on things that we have in common, on grounds where we can meet together and do constructive things. I truly think that that's the kind of future that we should be trying to foster. One last thing I wanted to talk about. We recently did a story, I recently did a story on how journalists were being named in retaliatory cases filed over the July uprising. So essentially what we saw were local level politicians taking or picking out, cherry picking the families of the victims of the July uprising, people who died in the July uprising or were martyred, offering them help to file cases. And then essentially what they did was they just took their signature on a blank piece of paper and they drafted, you know, the case themselves, listing out hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of accused. These cases will never go anywhere because ultimately it will be difficult to prove that a single bullet was fired by 500 people. That legal culpability just fails, and these cases will fall in the court. But just right after the July uprising, this was the first instance of retaliatory violence, of political retaliation. Nearly 296 journalists, sorry, not nearly, exactly 296 journalists, could be more, are named in such retaliatory cases, where we know for certain that journalists who can be partisan, who probably have a right to be partisan as well, but cannot kill, are being named in murder cases. And this is something I've been sort of debating about with people. Anytime people say that journalists incite violence with their journalism, that is a very dangerous road you're taking. That is a very dangerous rabbit hole you're going down through, because incitement is such an arbitrary offense. An incitement through journalism is such an arbitrary offense that it can essentially apply to anyone. And if you are prosecuting journalists for inciting, quote unquote, today, 4 years from now, if the regime changes again, 5 years from now, perhaps longer, the same cases will then apply to you. It's just the time that changes. It's just the faces that change. The violence will still remain. It will still perpetuate. So I think that's all from me at the moment.
Thank you, Zyma, for your insights. Now I'm moving to Dr. Rahman. As many of you know, that he's a political analyst and also an adjunct at Independent University of Bangladesh. And taking cue from what Zyma has just said, is it just the time changing here, nothing else? I mean, a lot of commonness more commonness than differences in terms of, if I may say, that bad political cultures among our major political stakeholders. And one party that used to speak of democratic values for all those years, how turned into an authoritarian one before all of our eyes. We have just witnessed that over the years. Now that another big party or two other big parties or other democratic parties who call them democratic are aspiring to go to power. So do you really see any potential change in their behaviors, and how, if you also take a note of the Bangladeshi political culture, how it is also getting influenced by the international trends and discourses. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me here. That's a clarification. The doctor with my name is not a PhD. I'm a medical doctor. So don't expect anything like a specialist from me. I'm a non-specialist political analyst here. So it will be better. Real doctor, unlike us. I don't know. Okay. I better skip it in the future so that this clarification won't be necessary. Okay. In fact, I was listening to that, and I requested Mr. Reaz to have my turn a bit later because I was a bit confused what to say, and I listened to the very good speakers. We had some interactions previously. We had some debates as well. I'm not going to debate here. But the situation, two issues, in fact, Mr. Reaz asked me to elaborate. One is the culture, the existing culture. Or is there any change among the political parties? And another is international situation. I think that is very important. I was very much interested to talk about this issue because we are living in a world where the trend will guide us. There is no alternative to that. We are in a very dire situation when we are talking about liberal political culture. In fact, the word is better political culture. I'll read it like better liberal political culture because I'm a proponent of that. Now, what happened post 5th August, I was not at all surprised, frankly speaking, because I didn't expect that much. Post 5th August, in many of my discussions, lectures, I tried to alert people not to have very high expectations. what happened in the last 15 years, we were under some serious authoritarian regime. I don't call it fascist. In my consideration, Sheikh Hasina was fascist hardly until 2018. And after that, it became a classic example of a mafia regime post 2018. I can give an example, some explanation for that. Post 2018, there was no narrative of that party, which is a critical part of a fascist regime. They simply just applied brute force, and some thugs were in the power. They used the state machineries for their organized crimes. So it was a mafia regime. So we lived under a mafia regime for at least 5 years, and before that, another 5 years under a fascist regime. So what happened, what was supposed to happen, that happened exactly. And frankly speaking, I'm satisfied the way we behaved with each other. Our political parties showed great tolerance, I believe, within this period. We are not in a civil war, at least. We are engaged seriously in some discussions of reform. And the number of political violence that Zyma told here may be 4-year high, but still, if I consider the other situations, post-uprising countries in the Middle East, in so-called Arab Springs, in 3 of the countries there was civil war, isn't it? So it's relatively low. I'm not saying that it should happen, but it's relatively low number considering the facts that we had previously. And number 2 is, when we are living under an authoritarian regime for a very long period, and previously as well, we didn't have very good practice of democracy. But after that, for last 10 years at least, in my consideration, it's not 10 years. After 2008, Awami League started becoming very authoritarian regime since 2011, when it amended the constitution and scrapped that caretaker government, and it decided to be in power forever, like we heard about 2041 till. Okay, so what happened is, when we fought against that type of regime, when we reacted in that way, we usually absorb their way of reactions. I've got my personal YouTube channel. I make vlogs on many issues, perhaps too many issues. Sometimes I find some comments, or can't you stop talking about everything? But what happens is, before 5th August, the amount of negative remarks, I'm not saying that criticizing logically, calling me names in pre-5th August was not that high, but post-5th August it was very high. So the reason, I think, is the mentality we had nurtured for that period. Many of us, in fact, thought, I want to change Sheikh Hasina to have that place. I want to put myself as, and impose my ideology, impose my thoughts after getting that chair. So these are the things that happened. I can remember what Edward Said told in Orientalism. In many of the cases he told, true independence is not there, because many independent fight happens because the natives want to grab the position of the colonizers. So when they go there, they behave like the colonizers. That's just the people change. In fact, many of us thought in the same way. Many of the political parties as well. They wanted to impose their own ideology in place of Sheikh Hasina. So the way we are going still, I think it's not that bad. We are heading towards an elections. There are some rhetorics. There are some political activities. These are all for bargains, I believe. And finally, we'll reach to an election, I believe, and it will be fine. Now, the next question, which is a bit more important, I'd like to refer a book recently written by Farid Zakaria, The Age of Revolution. In fact, he in fact discussed some key revolutions since 1600. But this century, in his consideration, we are undergoing a serious revolution, especially in political arena. The term illiberal democracy. In fact, some of the global leaders, I can quote Viktor Orban of Hungary, he openly says, I'm an illiberal Democrat. So when these resurgences are going on, what can we do in a country? We talked about institutions, we talked about norms, but everything is changing nowadays, isn't it? Some days back in the USA, no king movement happened. Trump is trying to be a king. He openly told that I won't obey the verdict of the Supreme Court in Abrego Garcia case. And for 2 months, he didn't bring back Abrego Garcia from El Salvador. So these are the trends going on. If we talk about Japan, Japan's newly elected prime minister, Sanae Takaichi, perhaps more nationalist than her previous prime minister, Ichiba. And Ichiba was more nationalist than Kishida. And Kishida was more nationalist than Shinzo Abe. So what's happening here? It's my consideration is the reaction to Xi Jinping. It's my consideration. So you cannot stop that. Now, another Xi Jinping or another leader, we can consider him, having in our boundary, in our border, I'm talking about Narendra Modi. The book Mr. Mirza referred to is How Democracies Dies. They talked about Trump as well as they also quoted about Narendra Modi there, because this person is getting and accumulating power in his country. Now, what should be the reaction in our country? Will we be able to make some institutes which will save us from this type of situations? Some days back, Mr. Tariq Rahman gave an interview to our channel. Then I asked a question, has Mr. Tariq made a mistake? Mr. Tariq talked very softly, like an academician. But nowadays, politicians are very popular and they're connecting people very easily. Somebody might think his language would have been much stronger, but he didn't speak in that way. Perhaps he might not be able to connect to the people. So the nature of people is changing nowadays. And political parties are keen to grab power, even through the democratic process. Again, I'm saying, How Democracies Die, the book refers to that. Nowadays, democracy dies within the constitutional framework. People are getting elected, they're coming to power, and they are changing and they are killing the democracy. I'll come to the last part, how democracy should be saved in that way. But this is the argument in recent times. But we are talking about making some institutes which will save us. I'm not saying that it's not necessary. It's definitely necessary, but it's not everything. But the main problem perhaps in our time is we are focusing so much on that, and we are starting to believe that if we can do it successfully, our democracy will be fully preserved. If it is so, the countries practiced democracy for a very long period. Europe, in many of the countries, you will find some authoritarian governments are going to the power and having some more power, increasingly in very liberal countries. In the USA, which is the is the oldest constitutional democracy in the world, in 2016, Trump, after being elected in 2020, he refused to hand over the power. It happened in that country. Nothing is written in the constitution. And if you are interested to change the laws, it's not that much impossible. Now, what should we do? I'd refer to Israel. Israel may be very bad in its neighboring areas, but within this country, there is a good practice of democracy, undoubtedly. But Benjamin Netanyahu decided to change it. In fact, it's the common trend globally. The same thing is happening in India as well. In India, I'll come to Israel a bit later. In India, Mr. Modi is trying to take the control of the Supreme Court recruitment. Their norm is there is a collegium system. The Supreme Court judges, previous and recent, they select a panel individually, independently, they send it to the government, and government can choose the judges from that. There is no involvement of government before that. Same system is working in Israel. I think you can remember, before attacking Gaza, thousands of people came to the streets against Mr. Netanyahu. Just Netanyahu wanted to have the same thing. Collegium system is also working in Israel, but Netanyahu was interested to have it in the parliament. They'll select the judges. Then people came on the street. That was, in fact, I was trying to say. No Trump, no king movement. People came to the street. Perhaps it should be there. In How Democracies Die, the writers suggested one thing. They used a very nice metaphor. In recent times, democracy isn't destroyed by some military dictator, military chief. Rather, it erodes. They use the term like cut bleeding by 1,000 cuts or hundreds of cuts, like that. So every day, every week, when any elected government is trying to erode your democracy, people should shout against that. That's very important, in fact. When you have a single cut, maybe some bleeding, if we, the citizens, tolerate that, yes, it won't cause that much harm to our democracy, the writer tells that, it is wrong. Rather, you have to protest every single cut. It will bleed, and continuous bleeding will erode severely. Finally, am I that optimistic? My answer is I'm not. I'm not. We might make big institutes. We might talk about that. But the global trend is very alarming. I really believe, especially having some leader in our country's context, in India like Narendra Modi, who is getting increasingly nationalist, fascist. It's a fascist party, I believe, the BJP. So when we have this kind of party in India, they are having their rhetorics towards us. I'm really in doubt how long will we be able to have starting the practice of liberal democracy. We started from very behind because Sheikh Hasina took us in some position. Recovering from that will be very tough. And at the same time, this reaction might create some nationalistic demagogue in our country as well. Somebody will take the chance and start using rhetorics, anti-rhetorics like Narendra Modi. And most alarming thing in our country is rightist politics in Europe and America are to some extent focused towards the immigrants or something like that. But in our country, it will be based on religion, because in India, it's based on religion. So its rightist politics will be severely alarming, and post 5th August, we're seeing some sort of signs here. So I'm not that optimistic that we'll be able to form some good political culture in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zahed. We are about to end our discussion, hearing from all the panelists. We'll conclude the round with Barrister Shishir Monir, and taking the last few sentences from what Zahed just mentioned about the role of religion into politics in our part of the world. So my one question definitely would be to Barrister Shishir Monir, that how do you see that if the Islamist political forces occupy bigger space in Bangladeshi political spectrum, will that be for a better political culture in Bangladesh? And how is political culture that we have now is connected to Bangladesh modern history? Mr. Monir.
Thank you, and thank you so much. And I believe there is no shortcut solution to this question. Nobody knows the answer exactly. It's a question of long-standing practice and procedure. All on a sudden, we cannot change the mindset and the psychology of a nation. It started its journey, going, rolling, facing accident. Some sort of rule of law started to run, again faced accident. And there is no such constitutionalism in our jurisdiction which is sustainable and consistent. So the thinking that the better political culture, all on a sudden, is not possible, in my humble understanding. So far so, in going to the root level of the political party's activities, I found that the politics in root level and livelihood are inextricably connected. These are sometimes inseparable twin. Political parties, activists become really desperate when they see their post holding and position holding ultimately giving him some sort of financial assurance. This is, in my humble understanding, is the root cause of all causes. Zyma said 88 people died. Just take the example from there, find out the root cause. We conducted a research, and at least 80 cases you will find that the problems start with sharing some sort of their livelihoods. Someone wants to control something and someone wants to create an obstruction. Then the problem started and ended up to killing someone. So this part is very difficult to address. And two very important issues are functioning in the root level. One is how to ensure their livelihood. Many people are involved with politics because they think political post position is giving him some sort of certainty to achieve his livelihood. Someone is holding position of a president of a particular unit, he is influencing the people, trying to collect some money, engaging with the administration, sometimes influencing the administrations in root level, and he does not want to lose his position because otherwise he will feel insecure. The position is giving him security in senses, in terms of social position and in terms of his financial arrangement. So in my humble understanding, that is the root cause. And another cause, there are many groups in the villages, in the local levels, who is engaged with politics. Some group is engaged with politics, they think they are superior. They need control over the inferiors. And sometimes when regime changes, inferior becomes superior, superior becomes inferior. Then clash starts with a new dimension. And this type of incidents happens in the root level, thousands and thousands and thousands. I'm telling you from my experience, everyday's experience. So discussion in an SC room and the scenario in the root level is much more different, which need to be addressed sensibly, otherwise they will react. Because holding particular political position, it has been proved that someone is holding a particular political position, he will have some facilities and privileges. And that privileges, even going against the existing culture and laws, he is getting those privileges. Even influencing the courts in the district level. So this is a huge level of financial syndicate. We have to address it. Why people are so interested to engage them in such type of political culture? Because of their financial security. If you lose your power, you will lose your financial security. That's why people do not want to lose his power. Suppose an Union Parishad chairman, he doesn't want to lose his power, because if he loses his power as a Union Parishad chairman, he will be in difficulty in terms of managing his finance and his other activities. He has to give assurance not only to him, but also to other activists as well. Otherwise, activists will go. Suppose a group of a particular political party, the leader is giving all supports to his subordinate leaders, subgroup leaders. And if he fails, subgroup leaders fails. That is the reality in the root level. So I don't think there is no shortcut. It's a very difficult job. It's a very long-term job. Nothing shortcut. However, where to start then? Bangladesh is a constitutionally supreme country. not Parliament Supreme. There's the parliamentary mechanism, then the executive mechanism, then the judicial mechanism. And these three organs violated their norms repeatedly. Suppose appointment of Chief Justice. Now, in the July Charter, we proposed that the senior-most appellate division judge will be appointed the Chief Justice of Bangladesh. But earlier, it was anybody from appellate division, even anybody from Supreme Court can be appointed as Chief Justice of Bangladesh. Then the executive took it's an opportunity. He picked and chose who is favoring him, who is not favoring him, in calculation, who may be potential Chief Justice, who may not be the potential Chief Justice, his background, father's background, mother's background, and choose a particular ideological, indoctrinated person. And that Chief Justice, when he assumed the power as Chief Justice, he is trying to establish the doctrine based on which he was appointed. And the chaos started. Reaction started. Serious reaction started. So this July Charter effectively is giving some sort of institutional certainty in terms of taking over power and retiring from those positions. If we can practice this in parliamentary level, in executive level, and judiciary, that may start a good institutional culture. It may be better culture. Suppose, for example, same person cannot be appointed as the party head and the Prime Minister. This has been proposed by the July Charter. So the concentration of power in one hand is very difficult. It's making things difficult. So the July Charter is trying to create a balance of powers, decentralization of powers from one person to different institutions and to different individuals. I believe the implementation of July Charter may create an acceptable way and means for future, and if you can exercise those rules and regulations for consistently, perhaps that would be a new, better culture. And the last one, people in general cannot exercise their independent mind. I found it from my experience. Journalists sometimes become journalists of ours and journalists of yours. Lawyer sometimes become our lawyer and your lawyer. Sometimes the economists become our economists and your economists. And that I and you became very dominant in terms of selecting people instead of we. So the term we should be given priority than that of I and you. Division is being created. Look at Bangladesh Supreme Court Bar Association. Lawyers are divided into two groups. These are this group lawyer, these are that group lawyer. Doctors even are divided into three unequal groups. Engineers are divided into doctors, engineers, lawyers, journalists, professionals, businessmen. Sometimes days are coming when the retired diplomats will be divided into two different other, even the serving diplomats. So people cannot speak their mind independently. So in my humble understanding, this is also seriously bad culture. Even the retired judges of the Supreme Court, they are taking particular position after their retirement of particular political party shelter. In that view, university teachers, it's a pain, it's a sufferings for the nation. The university teachers having doctors, PhD, postdoctor, they are taking shelter to a particular political party and uttering the same sentence and words what the political party is instructing to him. Then where is the independent mind? This is very bad, and I feel shame for that in my humble understanding. So my conclusion is there is no shortcut. It's a long struggle. And if we want to work, we have to work relentlessly. days after days, decades after decades. We have to work to pursue a better political culture. July Charter may be a good start. So let's start with the July Charter and continue until the struggle ends. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shishir Monir. And I'm glad that we could end this round of discussion from the panelists in about an hour or so time, so that we have around another hour to listen to people from the audience. You can, any one of you can actually add your views and points, and also ask any questions directed towards any of the panelists sitting beside me. Yeah, I have seen, some hands raised. Mr. Fahim, I'll come one by one. Mr. Fahim Mashur.
Thanks for giving me the floor first. I'm representing three actually citizen forums. One is Voice for Reform, Nagorik Coalition, and BRAIN. Some of other members are here as well. So I'll be very brief actually. So we have actually heard a lot of kind of things, and most of them, like what Dr. Asif Shahan was saying about the symptom of winners takes all, and that is the actually basically main scene of our political system, and also the requirement of institution building. And we have been talking about in the July Charter about upper house peer. That is also a part of the institution. Appointment of like ACC or Dudok to be freed, PSC to be freed. Those are some of the things that we have been doing activism for last 6 months. Some of them have been included in the charter. Of course, there are a lot of debate about the NOD, like note of dissent and other things. So these are some of the things that most of us actually agree. And I also get the point what Dr. Zahed was saying about the high expectation. We didn't have high expectation, that is true, no doubt. But at the same time, if there are 2,000 people who have died, they just can't, we can't blame our nation or our people to kind of have high expectation after this kind of change. So I think while we are realistic, pragmatic, at the same time we need to keep our expectation or bar quite high. So I would actually point out two things, and maybe those have not been touched that much for the democratic transition. I think there are two missing kind of foundation. One is the media. I'm happy that this seminar has also been, media has been part of organizing this seminar. We have a couple of panelists, but unfortunately, even in last 14 months, we have not seen enough discussion on the role of media in actually destroying democracy. We have seen, and we don't actually normally talk about this thing, about the corporatization of media. Now, almost kind of half of the media is actually controlled by a single conglomerate. They control everything. They control business, they control like economy, and they also control media. So why wouldn't they control political parties or political institutions when there is a new government? So I think we need to, like, this is a kind of elephant in the room. So we need to talk about the role of the media, and there was a very good media commission. They published almost 400, 500 page report, probably one of the best report. And unfortunately, not a single of them have been actually implemented. One of the strong recommendation about it was the decentralization of media ownership. Like we know the banks, there cannot be one group owning more than 10% of the shares of any particular bank. So the Media Commission report also suggested the same thing, that no single group can actually own more than 10% or certain percent of the kind of media group. So I think those are some of the things that we need to talk about, because we know that media is the fourth pillar of the state. So unless we address the issue about the media's kind of professionalism, no media can be neutral, but at least they have to be made accountable. So this is one thing. Another one is basically the civil society. Unfortunately, though a lot of us are coming from civil society, we have seen our civil society actually being a kind of enabler in last 15 years' time. So are we confident that civil society will not actually collaborate when there is a kind of blocking of human rights and all those things, even in the next, whoever comes to power. So we don't have any actually civil society, let's face it. Because most of the civil society are actually sponsored, or I would say funded by development partners or whatever. They don't exist organically. So I think this is one of also the, like this media and the civil society is also kind of something that we need to talk about. Last point I just want to say that about the whole thing about like political, like corruption and all those kind of chadabaji or extortion or those things. I think we also need to understand that there is a huge amount of youth unemployment. Almost 50% of the graduates coming out of the thousands of colleges and universities, they don't have any other jobs. And you know what? The largest employer in the country happens to be the political parties. So they are the basically largest employer. So they need to kind of feed these people. How can they feed these people? They have to do those kind of extortion at local levels. So I think we need to also talk about the political funding. I know there are some innovative models, like say for example, Jamaat-e-Islami may have something that kind of internal funding type of this thing, but or there can be state funding of political parties. But unless there are, we actually have a solution, there will be this kind of like what we say grassroots level, like extortion and all those things. We can't actually solve with the current system, with this high level of youth unemployment. So thanks, I just wanted to make
thank you, Mr. Fahim. Ambassador Shamsher Mubin Choudhury.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the option. After hearing these 6 speakers, I see a greater sense of skepticism than optimism. And I think this is perhaps reflective of the skepticism that is set in the nation over a period of 50 years. Every time we have expectation, we get disillusion very quickly. It started in 1972. It didn't start only 10 years ago. Eleanor Roosevelt, everybody knows her very well. She was the widow of President FDR and permanent representative to the United Nations for the United States. She said once, great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, and poor minds discuss people. And I think this is an eternal truth that she mentioned. The birth of Bangladesh was an idea formed by some great minds, starting with Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and added by the likes of Dr. Rahman Subhan and all the rest of us. Freedom fighters, of course, joined in. But instead of going from that great mind to event, we were straight to people. So Asad very rightly talked of empowering people. In Bangladesh, what has happened, we don't empower people. I mean, the politicians don't empower people. They empower persons. They empower a person or persons. And that is where the biggest fault line lies. And when you empower that person, then the rot starts, starting with Bakshal and then going down all the way to what happened now. Now, when you empower a person, the society then becomes dysfunctional. And talked of Italy. I served as ambassador to Italy. In Italy, you don't find the everyday mention of people like Garibaldi or Count Cavour or Mazzini. They had done their job. If the people are empowered, in Italy, the government changes very frequently, but the country remains stable because the society has been empowered. And that makes a difference. The same is the case in Germany. Now, when we talk of better political culture, what the fundamental issues we have to address is the justice system. Accountability, justice system. I recently heard a talk show, Barrister Shishir Monir saying, and very correctly so, that justice cannot be dependent on speed. It has to be dependent on facts and credibility. The moment you set time frame for delivering justice, you create a fundamental problem of delivering justice. Will that change? I hope it will. I do not know. So one has to look at how the future looks like in the coming days. Reaz, you also asked Shishir about the role of religion. I believe, and I've already said that, and I'm sure people like Dr. Rounaq Jahan also believes, and the likes of great minds sitting here, that people of Bangladesh are inherently non-communal. We have been traditionally non-communal, been historically non-communal. We don't right to put a tag on our forehead to say we are a secularist country. Equally, we don't need a tag to write on our shoulder that Islam has to be the state religion of Bangladesh. That is when you bring religion into politics, into the political structure. We are a non-communal society. Why even mention it? We don't need that kind of a tag or identification. I will say one thing, that the past matters. Of course the past matters. And the past is very, very important. I've served as ambassador in Vietnam that has gone through the most difficult past of war, 20, 30, 40 years of war. They fought against everybody in the world. And today's Vietnamese people say how pragmatic they are. They say past matters, but future matters more. And I think unless politicians, I wish there were more political parties represented here today, other than one from, I don't know whether he's here as a politician or as a lawyer. In both qualities, of course, he excels. But it is important to not get shackled by the past. Because today's generation, Zahed may correct me, more than 50% are first-time voters, or almost 50% of first-time voters, as Zyma is. Are we looking at them and not looking only at the past? My last comment here is the use of the word power. When you say so-and-so government was in power, so-and-so was in power, they were never in power. It is the people who are in power. The people use that power to give somebody responsibility to govern a state. So the use of the word power has to be done away with. The use of the power has to be replaced by the word responsibility. I am responsible for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, whatever the time is. And that way you can create, hopefully, a better political future. I do not know if in my time it will happen. I have a unique distinction of being in prison 3 times.
Sorry for the intervention, but please be brief.
Yeah, I will be very brief. I had been in jail 3 times in independent Bangladesh, in spite of being a freedom fighter, and total of 11 months. So that shows where the fault line lies. I really wish people like Asad to have a brighter future, and that way perhaps we can create a better political culture. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Shamsur Mubin Chowdhury. I think we have some other political representation here actually. I have seen, yeah, I will come to you, but before that I have seen one of the BNP leaders here. Mahbuba Habiba, do you like to, yeah, say something?
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. I'm truly honored to be to speak in front of you, but seeing the earlier speakers who actually discussed the issues, apart from the panel, I think I have very little time, but I need to address few things. I was listening to the panel. It is definitely a wonderful experience, but I also expected, like Shamsur Mubin Bhai, the few more representation from other political parties, because for a better, especially pursuit of a better political culture, they are the stakeholders as well, especially the youth of the face of July revolution. I'm missing them, missing my party people as well. So when we speak of better political culture, it's a very long process. I agree with Shishir Monir Bhai. But it also not only the responsibility of the political parties. It is a combined responsibility, or shared responsibility from citizens, from media, and of course from the civil society. The citizens, the media, the civil society, when I speak of making them active, I really mean to play their role which meant to be, not the role we have like experienced earlier. Here, a few things we can speak of, like when we speak of for better Bangladesh, like strengthen democratic institutes. We all are discussing. The July Charter is actually having a debate, and it's a continuing process. But there are a few more other things. Promote tolerance and dialogue. Let it be a continued process, not just after till the July Charter. It should be a continued process. Like empower youth and women. When we speak empower youth and women, we speak of train them, like create job opportunity, keep them busy, and allow them the avenue where they can earn their own livelihood. Like Shishir Monir Bhai is said correctly, if we go to grassroots, the scenario is entirely different. Bangladesh is a country which doesn't allow, provide social security. So in a way, political system has become a parallel social security in a very distorted way. We must come out of it. And there are other things as well. Zero tolerance for corruption, but it's also a very long way to go. It says about the whole country, like every people of the country or the system is somehow their thought has been distorted. It is really hard to, it's again a long battle. And the last one is encouraging digital responsibility. The digital space is a huge space. And we all live in it, no matter what. We all live in it either through our social media or some other way. We live in digital space. That should be secured. That should be. Bhaiya, one more minute. I can understand you are going to give me a call, but just a minute or so. Like the sister, the panelist who said about the killing, yeah, we are truly sorry for that. We are truly for the lives we lost during after 5th August, which is unimaginable, but it happened. And we also, I also like to mention, we also had 4 victims of extrajudicial killing during these few months. Do you know that? Do you know that a report from Color Contour which says that 313 killing per month till January and February, what does it reflect? It reflects law and order is not working. So this is, in a way, you are allowing of the political activists of grassroots to kill each other. There should be, the governance should be strong enough to handle these things. Last but not the least, we are all talking about the reforms, we are talking about the better Bangladesh, and we are talking about the better political culture. The basic thing is please give back the right of the common people to them. What is the right? The only right they have, the right to vote, the right to express their opinion. This AC room and all good speakers, all good intellectuals doesn't reflect the opinion of the people, common people. Again, I'm telling you, a people who's not that educated but earn their livelihood, they have their opinion, and please allow them to show us and express that opinion. That is what democracy is. I, of course, agree with Shahan Bhai. Election is definitely, electoral process is not the best way for the democracy, but at least it allows people to start expressing their opinion. It's maybe a narrow avenue, but it's avenue. Let us work on for a better political culture as well. Let us work on the reform, but as well as the election and the other due process of electoral process should be there and must be there. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I'm not a known face. I'm representing AB Party, Bangladesh. I'm the Women Affairs Secretary, Farhana Sattar. I'll actually, better political culture. To establish a better political culture presupposes building better institutions. Without bringing about an institutional reform, it is impossible to bring about a better political culture which upholds democracy in Bangladesh. And changing the rules of the game is also important, and bringing about a systemic change so that it creates an equal opportunity for all by removing the barriers of money and muscle power in election. So that will encourage more good people to come forward. Otherwise, not all good people have money and muscle power. In fact, money and muscle power negates a person from being good. And for better political culture to develop, we need a more educated and well-informed population who are not under any financial constraint while making their independent decision. That is very, very important. And I would like to address a few points which some of the panelists put forward, which is political violence being on a 4-year high seems to connote that the previous regime's last 3 years was not so violent. That is an oversimplification of the political violence in Bangladesh during that time, because not much data was available then, and now more data is available because there's no secrecy, there's no hiding of the numbers, maybe. I think that could be one of the reasons. And then no particular, if any particular profession is given indemnity from inciting violence or from directly killing of protesters, in any kind of, due to any kind of fear of falling into a rabbit hole. In fact, I would think that that, in fact, would put us into a rabbit hole for a long, long, long time. If sections of our society are treated with an elitist kind of view of being above the law, that kind of, puts equal opportunity of people, equal rights of the people at stake. I mean, no one should be above the law. If anyone has done anything wrong, then they should be, put to task for that, brought to task for that. Instead of using countries like India, Israel, and the US as benchmarks of democracy, as their democracies either eroding or is eroded, why don't we go through, why don't we use other countries, more whose democracies are thriving? There are many, many countries in the world where democracy is thriving. I've been in the Netherlands. I've seen how people are having a very nice and congenial atmosphere, democratic atmosphere. Maybe my stay was very short, but the people seemed happy. They had all the rights and privileges that a democratic country, we expect from a democratic nation. And another thing that that Shishir Monir Bhai said, that better political culture is not possible overnight. Yes, it's not possible overnight, but I don't think it should take decades. With political will, it can be, a Hassan, if the people and the political parties, people of course have shown their eagerness, that they want change. It's the political parties who have to show that they're ready for the change. And where root level 2 issues he mentioned, that livelihood and that superior connection of power are connected to the political parties, that is the kind of thing that we want to change. The winner takes it all mindset, that syndrome, that should change. With that will come the real change. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Omran Chaudhary. Please try to be brief so that we can actually give this opportunity to our other guest also to speak.
Just a few points. So it was mentioned about right-wing politics in Bangladesh. So the BNP has given out nominations, and many of the candidates, if not most of the candidates, are the same as its MPs between 2001 and 2006. So that's worrying. And some of the candidates have murder charges, and there's even a former communist insurgent. I was speaking to some BNP activists last week, grassroots activists, and they told me that in Jenaida they're nominating someone with 5 murder charges against him, 5 murder cases against him. So, you know, I think we've seen an acknowledgement from the panel that the political culture is not changing for the better, and that's a very worrying sign from the revolutionary groups. And the actual elephant in the room is the ban on the Awami League and the exclusion of the Jatiya Party from the consensus process. I think that's also a very, I think that puts the political process at risk of disenfranchising a very large part of the population, and you know that is an obstacle to a better political culture. And to Barrister Shishir, I want to ask, and this has been put forward to me, what is Jamaat's view on moral policing and the increasing attacks on women that has been happening in the post-uprising period? We're seeing moral policing in many districts, and this is a worrying sign. We've never had this before. And can I also add a point about what you said about the supremacy of the Constitution? I actually went through the records of the Constituent Assembly, and I saw that Sheikh Mujibur Rahman said that the Assembly was supreme and sovereign. So obviously, parliamentary supremacy, I think, is the more democratic interpretation of that, of this particular issue, whereas what you describe as constitutional supremacy, I think that's a bit more authoritarian interpretation. So obviously, I lean towards parliamentary supremacy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Professor Lailufer Yasmin.
Is it working? Okay. Thank you. I was actually not expecting to be called out. You know, as far as I listened and I saw that there was a sort of theoretical overview on how or which way political culture should go and why there are issues against sort of developing and understanding and accommodating political culture. And then, of course, we heard about the grassroots realities, which prevents from developing a sort of understanding and more cooperative political culture, and also that how politics provide a parallel social safety net for which politics becomes a business for many people, and it has been even worse with businessmen coming to politics because they want their return after they are elected. So all these things, and of course, sort of tells me that how can we have a better understanding and coexistence possible in our society, for which we thought that this political transformation took place. And not only that, issues of women's participation in politics was raised, and I like how Zyma presented it, because it's not only about women's political participation, it's a collective issue. It's an issue that the society as a whole has to sit together and understand that how can we ensure representation from both genders, from both sexes. And this is something I find less sort of talked about issue, that it is not only women's issue, it's men's issues as well. And at the same time, when we talk about some of the issues that moral policing and other things, often I think we forget that sitting here in Dhaka, it doesn't represent the rest of the country. So how we are sort of dealing with a particular issue in a particular context, or contextualizing of the issue, is extremely significant. As we see, it is seldom done. We can see we sort of try to override some of the issues that are right before us. Instead, what is politically convenient, we try to sort of promote that issue. All of this in turn creates a situation in which it is very difficult for women to participate and to raise their voice and be a part of decision making. We can see that the headline is being made only 10. So BNP has nominated only 10 women, right? And they were following the rule book that according to the July Charter, we followed this. But it's not only about following that, it's also about making a society more acceptable for listening to women's voices. And women not only talk about decision making, not only talk about what are at stake, but women have become the basic provider of social goods. For example, starting from peace, starting from teaching your children, starting from making the future generation, either tolerant or to be violent. Because it's from the mother we learn, the one that you very nicely put, I versus you. This is what we learn from the mother. Okay, they are different. We start the primary unit of teaching is the family, where the mother teaches, they are the neighbors, they are different than us, we are different. So this us versus them sort of dichotomy, teaching starts at the family. See, if we do not teach our women, if we do not let them make decisions, this dichotomy will continue, and we cannot ignore that, because family is the primary unit of teaching somebody about the future. And I will end by sort of identifying one other thing that, I was doing some research on student politics, and especially female students agency. I did it with, as part of a fellowship with one Belgian professor and one German postdoc fellow. And I have noticed just two things. That one is that in North Europe, there is a lot of studies on Bangladesh. We are often unaware of that. And there is an academic sort of understanding about Bangladesh, writing about Bangladesh. In my work in particular, when I interviewed the students who directly sort of, there was an FGD, focus group discussion, who directly took part in July uprising, as well as some of the sort of activists, both male and female, because I made it a point to learn about where are the women. I cannot only ask women, I also have to ask men. And students who are in their mid-20s, especially female women, especially female, they are not interested to be a part of decision making. And I asked them why, and this is something I've been raising, and people are unwilling to accept it, because students in their 20s, they tell me that I have a family to take care of, and apart from that, if I am taking any more responsibilities, I cannot do either well. So for them, at least at a certain point, they don't want to be a part of public decision making, they don't want to join in the politics. And I asked them, so someone else is going to make decision for you, how do we resolve this issue? And they said, okay, we will see. And so there are some apathy towards joining in politics. It is not only because of slut shaming, not only because of being harassed in media, but also because they are directly saying that we are entrusted with too many responsibilities, and that is not humanly possible for a woman to carry out. So how can we create rather a level playing field where, as I tell my students, you don't bring a child from your father's house. It's a joint decision by a couple, right? So how can we create this kind of facilities for women so that they are more encouraged to be a part of public decision making? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Mr. Zafar Subhan, is a good time to hear some thoughts from you. Mr. Zafar Subhan is founding editor of Dhaka Tribune, and come Sunday, he will come out with his new newspaper, Counterpoint.
Thank you very much, Reaz bhai, and I should say that I'm very pleased to see that both the Norwegian Embassy and Dhaka Tribune are carrying on this tradition, and you yourself, this has been a wonderful discussion, and I'm very pleased to be a part of it. Let's talk a little bit about political culture, because that's what we're here to discuss. I think Barrister Shishir makes a good point where he said that, look, a political culture does not exist in isolation from the rest of the culture in this country. And so, of course, when we're talking about reform, these processes are going to be very slow, very painstaking. And, we have spent the last year discussing reform. We have now 84 reform recommendations. around which there is still no great consensus for the vast majority. And so the question is then, where do we start? Is this, do we start where we talk about issues of representation? Do we start by talking about issues of internal political party democracy? And these are all issues, of course, which require discussion and in time will evolve. But I would suggest that a very simple place to start is suggested to us by Zyma's point, where she talked about people who have lost their lives in recent times in political violence. I feel that that's really the crux of the issue. If we look back, we talk about, Bangladesh has been, now how long have we not had democracy in Bangladesh? And people might say, well, we haven't had a functioning democracy for the last 15 years. Well, I put it to you, I'm not sure we've had a functioning democracy for the last 52 years. We have had elections, good elections in 1991 and 1996, 2001, 2008. So it's not that we have not had good elections in the past, but we've never had a culture where people are free, fully free, to exercise their franchise and vote their conscience, and where people can organize and speak without fear of political violence up to and including death. We have had a culture going back 5 decades of extrajudicial execution, of disappearances, of political leaders and activists being arrested and thrown in jail, and of course, violence and killing. If there's one place we can start, I feel this is where it ought to be. If there is one thing we need to draw a line under, which is both the sine qua non of having a functional democracy and a functional polity, and really the bare minimum. And without this bare minimum, I don't even know, what we're talking about. The bare minimum must be to create a violence-free political culture. That I also think is achievable. I think many of the other reforms we are talking about may take years, perhaps decades to come to full fruition. They are part of an ongoing political conversation we're having. They're not going to end with elections. They're going to continue, and that's as it should be. And we'll continue to have these discussions. But what we really need is to hone in on political violence and understand that as long as political violence remains with us, that we cannot say that we have a functional democracy in Bangladesh. And I actually think that this, not only is it the first step, which I think we need to accomplish to get to where we need to go to in terms of our democratic aspirations, I think it is a doable first step. And when we look at what has been achieved after the uprising of July, and hopefully we'll have elections within the next few months, and then you look at this interregnum period of the last 15 months, and how much has been achieved in terms of thoroughgoing political reform, and maybe more could have achieved, and maybe we will continue to do these. But if we can create a culture without extrajudicial executions, without disappearances, without political killings, where the jails are not filled with innocent people, that alone, if we accomplish nothing else, that alone is an incredible and very, very meaningful and very worthwhile accomplishment for this country. And that alone would justify and fulfill the aspirations of the July uprising. So that's the point I want to make. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mic take to এদিকে দিবেন আমাকে.
Thank you. I'm Manzoor Ahmed from BRAC University. I work in the education field. I have a question. I don't mean to be particularly provocative, but I'm wondering if the talk about political culture is really the most relevant discussion, because political culture or the norms and institutions don't just descend from heaven. It's not something given. It is something built up. It is something created, constructed by the people, by the political parties and so on. And when we talk about political culture being polite and genteel to each other and so on, like in maybe in Norway, that has happened over a period of time because there is some common understanding among the parties and the people about what the political aims and political goals are, and some trust in the system that has been built over a long period. We don't have that right now, and our political class, which all the political parties, they claim to represent the people, and they claim to speak in the name of the people. But then what we have now, the July Charter, does this really give us a roadmap for social justice, dignity of human beings, and really improving the life of common people, or even local government when people's everyday life is affected by what happens at the local level in education and health and so on. So it's more about, you know, dividing the power among the political class, this July Charter. That's what they're doing there. And it's everything else is kind of secondary there. So we don't have that political sort of goal or understanding of what we want to achieve by politics. So should we not talk more about the politics, the kind of politics, the political goals and objectives as a nation we should have? Then the culture will emerge from there. Isn't that the way to go? That's my question. I hope Professor Rounaq, Jahan, and the panelists may talk about it a little. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have Ambassador Nicholas here, the Swedish ambassador in Dhaka. You like to make any point?
I wasn't planning on making any comment. I think it's very difficult to compare. Some of you were referring to Northern Europe and the Nordics. I mean, our respective democracies have evolved from the introduction of universal suffrage. I think Norway was before Sweden in 1913. We came in 1921. That is the main sort of divider in my opinion, that our democracy became fully open and participatory. And this doesn't. Somebody was also referring to the fact that there is a social contract among the electorate and with the political parties. Another difference, of course, is that we have a proportional electoral system. So coalition building among parties, not only on a national level, but also on a regional and municipal level, is absolutely essential in order for our countries to run. And then another comment I could make, yes, on women participation. I think in our experience in the Nordic countries are that once you introduce parental leave, also for men, it is a great equalizer, and it also enables women to have more participation at the higher levels of society. So those would be my brief reflections. There was a lot to unpack here. There is also the role of journalists and media, and it's an all society effort. It's not only the responsibility of the government, but it's from early years of education, and all parts of society are needed to be engaged in order to have a better political culture. And I'm not saying Sweden has a perfect political culture, far from it, but there is engagement from all quarters in my country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Professor Jude. Professor Jude is the acting Vice Chancellor of ULAB.
Yes, so I would like to focus on the electoral participation of the youth. A colleague of mine at ULAB did a study regarding the 2024 election, the likelihood of the youth to participate in voting. And they found out that only 30% of the youth wanted to vote in that election. So now that we'll have a new election, should we take it as a given that the youth would enthusiastically participate in this coming election? Or shouldn't we? Will the youth take this election seriously? Would the youth, knowing that there are other ways to make their voices heard, will they want to participate in this election? And also, should we convince the youth that they should participate in this election? And then how should we convince them? So a lot have been mentioning about the importance of education. So I was just thinking, would voter education help? Would civic responsibility lessons help? Okay,
thank you. Mr. Sharif from Oxfam. Ekhane samne.
Thank you, Reaz, for giving me the floor. I would like to talk only three letters that is called triple P. Generally, currently, what we generally follow that is called power, politics, and people. So all the time, power people who generally generates the policies and institutions, and then ultimately lead the people. But it should be people, then in a structure that is called policies and their power. So after the independence, what we have seen so far, so in nature, political parties all about talk about people. Like even today, we call people is at the forefront, only the right is the vote. And when they can cast vote, that signifies probably it's a power, but it is not. One of the fundamental things one of the panelists raised, like when you have the education, whether you are empowered with technology, when you have all of the basic fundamentals improved, automatically people are in a place who can be part of power and policies. So that's why throughout the discussion, probably in any sort of political cultural change for a country, fundamental improvement of the people would be the right thing to be evolved. Otherwise, like in the next political election, probably political parties will go to ask for vote only for as their rights. But other basic rights, like the education, they're important. How to be then for that? So I think that would be the key things that should be in place in a discussion for political cultural transformation. And of course, the people issues is the main area. Like for example, since we have the big transformation 1952, 1971, 1990, and of course in 2024, if you see in all of the transformation, people has been at the center, particularly the youth. We have more than 60% people are at the age of youth. But if you see, if in your discussion, youth is not there. So that's why engaging youth with the fundamental that my previous speaker was saying. So my last point would be, so let's kindly even to focus this fundamental basic empowerment. Even the political manifesto that will come soon from all of the parties, even youth, women, would be the center of our any sort of better cultural transformation. Like we are talking about yesterday, 5% of the women in the BNP has been nominated, and we are encouraging it. Why not it's 30% or 40%? And youth representatives should be there with the basic things being empowered. So this is the things I should say that should be part of political culture, and political parties fundamentally should take into consideration. Thank
Thank you.
Thank you. Ambassador Moshi.
Thank you very much. It was a very interesting and lively session. First of all, I have to remind that all our last major three political parties have a history of partial or more or less party which does not follow what you call real political culture. Especially, all three parties have tainted what you call themselves as a fascist to some extent. Whether it was Jatiya Party in 86 and 88, holding a single party election, and BNP also have the same track record, and not to mention also 2014 and 2018. So all the three major political parties never followed the real political culture. They always have tainted themselves as a fascist parties. Now, the people of the country and the civil society always wanted to change or reform in the political system. They have showed in 1990 change, in 1996, 2006, and now 2024. The people wanted really to see the reform. But unfortunately, we have seen it is not actually the reform. The interim government or the category government, they wanted to push an agenda to put a particular party out of race and bring the other party to the power. In 2024, the students, especially in the youth, they wanted to see the matters relating to employment, corruption, those things should be addressed first. But now we see they have put their full trust on Professor Yunus. No doubt he's one of the best person. But what we have seen, he has let us the whole country down. It looks like he's now pushing forward for the election. Election was not the main issue for the youth of 2024. That was not their main agenda. They wanted to see a real reform in the country history. They wanted the same thing in 2006, which was also very much laid down. I was very close to the politics for the last 34 years. I've seen how the civil military bureaucracy manipulate the election. In 1991, I still remember, we were all taken to a Mamsing cantonment where the army chief has told us, all vote against Awami League. Now we are taking, you see, we wanted to have, I don't know, I'm not a supporter of Awami League, but still what will happen to another 30% voters who was a supporter of Awami League? Now we want to see I think instead of holding election, they can announce BNP as a winner of the election. It is still not what you call equal for all political parties. In 1991, we have seen the same thing. They put the BNP, Jatiya Party out of the race. So, I think this culture needs to be changed. And we have to, see the real reason. And we have to go for the real, change, what Mr. Ambassador Shamsham is saying. For the next generation, we have to work. The present generation has failed in every sphere of our country's affairs. There is no culture, not only in politics, even in service, even in teaching. Everywhere the culture is gone. Because culture is a whole process. It's a long process, and it goes time to time. So I think we should not let our next generation down. We have to support them. We have to see that they are being protected. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Actually, we have to wrap up this particular session before we actually listen to our special guest, Professor Rounaq Jahan. But before that, as I saw few hands, so I will really request all of you to make your interventions very brief, within 1 minute, each one of you. First, we will start with this gentleman on the front desk.
Thank you. 1 minute is quite enough. I'm Dr. Sajjad Siddiqui, currently chairing the Department of Peace and Conflict Studies, University of Dhaka, and lecturing for the last 17 years, researching on the root causes of conflict and etc. So today's a better political culture, if we consider this as a watchword of today's discussion, there must be this discussion followed by reconciliation. I was missing extremely the term reconciliation. Because, and what we witnessed since decades, that unreconciled assimilation is more dangerous. Even after victimization, Jamaat-e-Islami for ages, still the question is coming at the fore, if Jamaat can take part in the election in the coming, why not Awami League? This is because unreconciled assimilation. The other political parties, for their own benefit and manipulated dividend, they tried to malpractice and manipulate the political game. And because of this unreconciled assimilation in the political stream, despite the stigmas and the oppression the Jamaat-e-Islami faced, still it is facing the criticism and stigmatization. So the same thing happened after 1991 election. Ershad, unreconciled assimilation. Even I'm witnessing the Awami League is another incidence witnessing unreconciled assimilation. So we can follow the truth revealing things and the apologies and the forgiveness from the masses. And the final thing is the trials for the correctly right persons who really are big, the perpetrators. So these are the very narrow downing all these things. Without unreconciled assimilation, the reconciled assimilation, political culture will not be effective. That's what Dr. Zahed pessimist. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Sajjad. Mir Junaid Jamal from Asia Foundation.
Thank you. I'm Junaid. I work for the Asia Foundation. So I had a question. I think some of our colleagues have already questioned that. The main idea is from confrontational to democratic negotiation. How can we promote that culture, and what civil society and media in particularly can do to get that culture going on? That will be my question to the panel. Thank you.
Dr. Nur Muhammad Sharkar from North-South University.
Thank you, sir, for giving the floor. Actually, here the main topic that we are talking about is political culture. So it's basically related to the culture of our particular country. So what's the culture that we actually belonging? So in order to grasp that, I think the one point is missing is that political socialization. So in order to fix the political culture or to improve it, we are looking forward to better political culture. We need to understand what are the political moves of political socialization in our country. During the last government, they have used education in a very bad way to institutionalize their political culture. So we have to talk about, and we have to remove this kind of thing, improve educational sector, and most importantly, the political parties that we are having now. So within the political parties, whether the democracies are practicing or not, if political parties, if we see that democracy is not practicing within the parties, how can these parties can establish democracy when they are in power? That's the very important question we have. And last important thing is mass media. Mass media has two aspects. One is regular media we have, television and other channels, and another is social media. So I'll talk about basically social media, because in social media, same person is becoming reporter, same person is editor, and same person is publisher. There is no check and balance there. So we have to think about something, that how to use this social media to increase or to improve the political culture in a constructive way. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. One gentleman on the back. Yeah, two. Please, each one of you speak for 1 minute.
Hello. My name is Ripun Mahmood from AB Party. My question is actually, when you were taking an example from Western country for better culture, better political culture, we know they have real citizen. But in our political atmosphere, we are talking about media, politician, institution, but we are not involving our citizen because they are not the real citizen. When I am campaigning in my constituency, people are asking me whether when you are MP in parliament, could you solve my problem, land problem, or anything? Because they are seeking justice to particular man or politician rather than institution, because they doesn't have any faith or any belief on institution. So I think we have to create an atmosphere so that we could make our people as a real citizen. What that mean, a real citizen? Basically, before election, we saw the politicians are try to engage with people and giving through 500, 1,000 taka. They are actually buying vote from the people, and people think, yeah, that's the mean only. I have only right to buy my vote, and that's mean.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dipon. I think we understand the point you wanted to make. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, moderator. I am a journalist. Everybody want to control me. Nobody want to give me space, but I paint my own way. Thank you. So it's like the Zyma was saying the political tolerance and harmony in the grassroots level. That actually comes with the money. Where money is not there, the internally displaced person we found around the Bangladesh, especially on the political violence and conflicts. So the number of internally displaced person due to the conflicts, I mean the political conflicts, is rising rather than the previous years. And I do have a question to Mr. Asaduzzaman. Like in the previous regime, the governance, those are bad, but you call so-called bad governance. Do you really mean that? Thank you.
Thank you. Just one more intervention. Catherine Cecile, Chief of Party, Democracy International.
Dhanabad. Thank you so much. I'm Catherine Cecil, and I wanted to just share our experience that underscores what we heard from Jamaat-e-Islami. With funding from FCDO and support from the Asia Foundation, we support political parties to strengthen internal democracy and inter-party cooperation and harmony. And we've supported parties to convene multi-party advocacy forums in 22 different areas. And these groups take on local advocacy projects. These are terrific platforms for building trust and also building leadership opportunities for women and youth. And we are counting on these groups to help us have a smooth political transition as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I'm just requesting Professor Rounaq Jahan that with your permission, I will take 10 more minutes for some of our panelists to respond a few questions that came to their way. So not necessarily all of you have to speak another round, just if you no so thank you. So yeah, Mirza Hassan, please.
I'm not responding to questions, but I want to clarify the central message for today from my side. We talked about political culture. To me, political culture is the outcome, not the causes, not the determinants, okay, period. If we don't have the right institutional constraints for the elites, by whatever means, there could be constitutional means that we tried in the July Charter, but basically failed, essentially failed, it's been diluted to nothing. Even that's being also resisted by a major party. And I believe in what Madison said, which is that if men were angels, then we don't need checks and balances and constitution and state, because we are all angels. But we know we are not all angels, okay? We'll have problems. We are a normal human being, and it's fun to be human being with vices and, you know, and good things. So that's my point. when we talk about political culture, it's a routinization of norms and values, essentially, but that can only thrive, can only be nurtured when the elites are severely constrained and put them in a narrow corridor, so they cannot afford to have bad norms. Okay, I've talked about bad norms. That's number one. And beyond that, we need some institutional big changes in the politics itself, which is that we need to break the monopoly of the political class. We are all political actors, and we must have not only barking power, gheu to kollam, but biting power, which means we need legal mandate to work outside the state and inside the state, and that's what is called direct democracy. We don't have it. And the politicians hate that, and they will resist, but we have to fight back. And we need to shatter the norms, bad norms, that the political elites now have. We need to break it, and only an active citizenry, collective force, mandated by Constitution can do that. So we need to go into that. And last point, definitely institutional innovations like upper chamber, like proportional representation will take us, will bring this plurality of interest, will break the political monopoly of the political classes, and then you can move on. That's the determinant, and the outcome is a good political culture. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Professor Shahan, yeah.
All right. Thank you. Very quickly, I think I just want to point out, since we are kind of summarizing, I just want to point out a few things. First of all, I mean, as I've mentioned, when I talk about election as the minimalist condition, that doesn't necessarily mean I reject that idea. Election is a must, but my problem is, I mean, we sometimes equate democracy with election. We have to move beyond that. That's number one. Number two is, when we are talking about, I mean, there have been a lot of discussion that, whether we are focusing on the right questions, whether institutional questions are enough, whether constitutional reform are good enough. I want to address this question. I mean, this is important in, in the sense that we are asking a lot of questions that, we are not necessarily dealing with the problems that the normal people face, the citizens face. We are not necessarily dealing with that. You are absolutely right. But the problem is, what we have seen that whenever we will try to empower our citizens, if we look into the social accountability tools that we have devised in the past, all of those institutions, all of those empowering techniques have been captured by the political actors at the local government level. Now, why did that happen? That happened because constitutionally we eventually created a system that encouraged the political actors to concentrate power. So there is a connection between the meta level changes and the micro level changes. So once we if we just simply ignore those meta level changes and just focus on the micro level changes and focus on the societal things and others, we may do something, but our experience shows that in most cases, whenever the NGOs or the development partners come up with a project, as long as the project lasts, things work. The project ends, everything disappears. So if we really want to go for those unsustainable changes, we can just go for that without thinking about the meta level changes. We are talking about, just to give one example, that we have a discussion, there was a discussion on the internal democratic practices. Now the question is, you teach the party, you train the party about those internal democratic practices, but at the meta level, there is no incentive for the political parties to utilize those rules. Why would they do that? So they will not necessarily do that. It doesn't matter how much training you provide to them, what you teach them that, this is how you should behave, they will not do that. So this is where the meta and micro comes into play, and that is why we need to talk about people, of course. And I really don't like that idea that real citizen, I don't know what real citizen is. Everyone is a real citizen. Don't necessarily just, identify someone and just think that people can be bought with, money and things like that. That's not true. I think the ugliest scene that I have seen during the time of this interim government is when the chief advisor indicates, when he was asked a question about referendum, and he said, they will, vote for money. I think that's absolutely, bad thing. That's a wrong thing. And that's not what citizen is. So let's not use those terms that real citizen and think that you can buy citizens and do all of those things. It's not. We are making a very bad assumption about citizens. Let's not do that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, Asad.
Yeah, I would like to respond to some comments here. First of all, I would just start with that most of our discussions today is about identifying the problems, identifying the features and characteristics. But the real question is of the process. How should we improve the symptoms of political culture? So that involves a whole spectrum of sectors with it. So I think we'll be able to discuss about it in some future events. And also, to be very honest, actually, since I am one of the most youngest speakers here, also in this whole gathering, so in my whole lived experience, I heard all these things countless of times, countless of sittings, years, but nothing changes. For the worst case, nothing changes. So civil society was there for eternity. We couldn't actually resist the authoritarian system. That is true. We have to recognize that fact. So, and most of the corruptions, most of the bad things, most of the changes in the state mechanisms were done by the most intelligent and educated persons. So this is also, it seems contradictory. I was proposing about empowering the citizens through education, but you see the educated people as the most corrupted. So also here comes the question of norms and all. So then some comments I heard that not including Awami League and Jatiyo Party was bad political culture. So I think if I can make the analogy right, so not including the oppressor into the discussion is bad political culture. So I think whoever made this comment should reconsider the premises of that logic, because Awami League did such oppression that this uprising was due. So in a post-uprising scenario, without giving the oppressors their due justice, I think that comment is not valid. Because we were fighting before the guns of the police, Hasina's police. So in 5th of August morning, in Karan Bazar, I was moving to Shahbag. So I was caught by police in the CNG, and the constable held his shotgun in my belly and said that if you argue with me, I will shoot you and make your guts out. So that is my experience. If I would not make this response, then actually it would not justify my lived experience. So that's it. That's the question of Awami League. That should be the bottom line. They have to get their justice. You cannot talk about including the Nazi party in a post-Holocaust German reconstruction. That's the bottom line truth. Okay. And the third point is that some of my journalist brother asked that actually I used the so-called bad governance. Actually, it was used in an ironic way. I forgot to mention the quote-unquote. So, the dominant narrative during the Awami regime was that bad governance is okay as long as development is happening. So, in that sense, I used so-called bad governance. So I think that is clarified. So that's from my side. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Zyma, you wanted to make a point?
We can all smell lunch, and Rounaq ma'am has been waiting so patiently. So I'll be very, very brief. Mass media will absolutely fail to uphold political culture or democracy or whatever we're fighting for at the moment, the same way that they've failed in the last decade and more. And the main reason is because I think the Media Commission, the Media Reform Commission, then as Fahim Bhai had mentioned before, was one of the most excellent commissions to have been created post-uprising, and none of their recommendations have been taken into cognizance. The July Charter makes very little reference to what should be done as a country to ensure freedom of the press, to ensure independence of the press, and sans that, we are already seeing a reverse politicization of the press. What used to be a mostly Awami League driven press is now at the moment the exact opposite. And while the thing is, the press will always have corporate masters. That is not something that you can change, because it is a business. At the end of the day, it is a commodity. This newspaper is nothing different from a packet of chips that you may buy, or a packet of biscuits, or a shampoo mini pack. It costs pretty much the same as well. And so if this is a commodity, this will always be run by corporate investors. You can't take corporate investors out of the picture. What you have to do is make sure there are enough safeguards between the investors, the editors, and the journalists, so that journalists and editors can do their job, and they don't have to, and they're protected from the business interests of the investors. We're not saying that journalists are an elite society and that they should not be brought to justice. What we are saying, however, is that journalists cannot murder. There are laws, there are relevant laws, there are relevant bodies such as the Press Council. You may like it, you may hate it. It doesn't work. I agree it doesn't work. It needs a revamping, but it still exists. It's there. Anyone can go and file a complaint there. The Media Reform Commission has been asking for an independent media commission so that such the issues that have surrounded, the issues that have cropped up regarding journalists, regarding the media over the past decade and a half, they can be addressed in the future, so that ownership can be addressed, so that redressal can be addressed. The Commission is not going to be seeing the light of day because the government wants to retain control. And so here we are with promises to fail you in the future.
Yeah, thank you, Zyma. Zahed?
Just a simple, short clarification of what I told in the last part of my speech, why I am a bit pessimist about developing the political culture. Now a bit medical science knowledge, I've got some. As a part of our course, we did study psychiatry. We had to study Freud as well over there. We learned about id, superego, and ego. There are some ids, so we are inborn instincts like our greed, anger, jealousy, vengeance. These all are our inborn instincts. But the liberal democracy, what we're trying to say, all our superegos, we learned it after coming to this world. What psychiatry or psychology says, ids are always stronger, always stronger. It's inborn instinct. It developed over thousands of millions of years from our previous other species as well. Now the problem is, these populist demagogues connect to our ids. They try to make us angry, they try to make us jealous, they try to increase vengeance within us. So that exactly is happening. So we have to have these factors consideration in our. So when some righteous demagogue will arise, I believe it will arise, I believe that, then that person will try to make people, some portion of society angry. It's not at all necessary to have everybody angry. Donald Trump needed some percentage of people to be in power, everybody. Ma'am told about Italy, brother also told about Italy and Netherlands. In Netherlands, there are some rightist populist leaders are coming back. In Italy, the ruling party, Brothers of Italy, is in fact has very strong connection to the previous fascist. In Italy nowadays, in Mussolini's shrine, you can go and you can have the fascist salute. It was banned previously. So these are the things happening in the world nowadays. So we'll face this in our country, undoubtedly. Some will come, try to make some portion of people angry, try to spread hatred towards other. I and you, we have talked about that the future politics in our country, or the contemporary politics in global context is it's the division between I and you, or I and other. So these are the challenges we are going to face. That's why I told that I'm a bit pessimistic, but we have to consider these factors so that we can have our strategies, set our strategies properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Zahed. Now, Barrister Shishir Monir, I suppose one or two questions were meant for you. So, if you like to respond very briefly.
So, one question. You say the constitutional supremacy. The constitutional supremacy means the three organs of the state, neither of the organ is supreme. Not the parliament, not the judiciary, not the executive. It is this constitution which distributed the power among the three organs is the supreme. This is called constitutional supremacy. And the second one is, if the religious political party comes to power, will it be good or bad? I think the religious political party who are now advocating for people's support, I hope they will be inclusive, they will be much more pragmatic in their understanding, with honesty and integrity, along with accountability. And the last question, my last sentence, there are many odds, there are many difficulties, so hope has been created. We are hopeful. And my last sentence is, let's work together for a better tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, we are concluding this session. Now we'll be listening to hearing the our special guest today, her concluding remarks and also insights, and also she will be, I'm sure, responding to some of the discussions that we already had today here. Professor Rounaq Jahan, she is Distinguished Fellow of CPD.
Is it working? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. We have been sitting here for 3 hours, listening to very rich discussion. Many people have raised a lot of valid issues, asked questions, some suggestions have come up. Being the last speaker, at this, after 3 hours, I don't want to take too much time. I also know that I'm always told that when you go to a doctor's office, if you cannot put out what your problem is in 3 minutes, then there is no retention. And I'm sure that for a collective like this, after 3 hours, people's capacity for retention is very limited. I would only make a few broad comments. First, on this whole question of culture and its definition. And culture may mean various things. It may mean norms, it may mean behavior patterns, it may mean attitudes, but it may mean practices. But I mean, it is not that there is something good or bad. I agree with that, but there are differences. And I would not like to put one superior to another. On a lighter note, my good friend, a former Norwegian ambassador here in Bangladesh, Ingeborg Stoffring, she gave me a book to read, which says how to understand the Norwegian and work with the Norwegian. And there, I think what they say that when the Norwegians are in a seminar, they listen very carefully, and then then they have a couple of questions in mind. But after a long time, they decide that it is better not even to raise all these questions. They keep silent. But of course, if we know that Indians, Bengalis, Amartya Sen's famous quote, the argumentative Indian. So whether being silent and not raising questions, or whether being argumentative, which is better or not, one cannot say. But we are different, and different because after a long time of experiences, we adjust to our circumstances. And that is how I think differences in behavior sometimes take place. Also, culture is not something, or behavior pattern is not something, or attitude is not something that cannot be changed. It changes over time if circumstances change. Just to give a personal example, in the 1960s, when I was a graduate student at Harvard, if I went to Boston, some sort of ordinary people in Boston, Irish person would ask me, so what are you going to do after you finish? And if I say that I'm going back to my country, then the immediate question was, why you don't want to stay in our country? You don't love us? But I think that now, after 50 years, very few graduate students would face that kind of a response, that why don't you stay and work here? So things have changed. In the 60s, a woman in a sari in America was a very exotic creature. But now there are so many immigrants. So the point I'm making is that we should not think that the behavior pattern or practices will not change. It will change if we change certain kinds of things. Now, I mean, we have a formal institutions and then also an informal arrangements. I think one of the points that was made repeatedly here, and I want to stress that, is that the rewards and how you change certain kinds of behavior. And here, I think rewards and punishment system is very important. What I think Shahan was talking about, the incentives and disincentives. When we are children, our parents always bring us up rewarding certain kinds of behavior and punishing certain kinds of behavior. Of course, these days, probably children are not either rewarded but not punished. But anyway, I think that this also, I think, is true in terms of certain kinds of political behavior. And here, if certain kinds of behavior is all the time rewarded and certain kinds of behavior is not punished, then of course you will develop and continue to behave in a particular way. And so we talk about citizens or people being sovereign, but they really can punish political leaders, political parties once in 5 years if you have free elections, or probably 15 years may go by and you cannot even punish. But there is no system of continuous kind of monitoring and giving some punishment. So I think we need to, if we are thinking of changing certain kinds of behavior, then we need to, apart from elections, we have to think of certain other continuing steps that you can take, or which will then punish certain kinds of behavior. So here again, I want to mention 3 concrete steps that we have been talking about for many years now, since before 2024, during 2005 and 6, there were a lot of then civil society mobilization about reforms. And I think at that time, there were many ideas came. At that time, there were much more, I think, discussion on changing behaviors, good politics, clean politics than what we have now. So the 3 things we talked about at that time, one is that all elected officials should put in the public domain their annual statement of wealth and income, so that if it is annually then put in the public domain, at least it shows some transparency. And at least then we would know how much wealth they are, their wealth is increasing. I remember that in 2000 and, during the 2008 election, Awami League promised at that time that if they are elected, then they would put this kinds of annual statement in the public domain. But I think later the decision was that the MPs would put their statement to the Prime Minister, and Prime Minister might have seen this, but we have never, the public never saw it. I think last year, Dr. Yunus also mentioned that he would put in the public domain the the statement of wealth and income of the advisors. And again, then we were later told by some advisors that it was given to the cabinet secretary or somebody. But the public, we never got to see this. I don't know, during all this political dialogue, I think Shishir Monir was probably attended some of this dialogue, whether this issue came up and whether the politicians now came to some agreement on this particular step, that if, when they are elected, moving forward, that all elected public officials would put in the public domain this kind of statement. The second, I think, proposal that we made, again, this is nothing new. This is there in every other country. And that is that members of parliament should adopt a code of conduct, which will include a statement about their conflict of interest, so that one knows that which committees they can sit in and which they cannot. Again, I remember that in, I think, 2009 or 10, Sabit Hossain Chaudhary tried to introduce a private member's bill, drafting a code of conduct bill, but where he, I think, didn't even get the support of his own majority party. So as Mirza has mentioned before, that we find that for certain kinds of behavior pattern, there is always all-party agreement that we citizens may not like, but as far as their perks and privileges are concerned, then all the elected officials somehow can agree. The third, I think, and this Mirza has mentioned, this has been on the public domain for many years, that the MPs should not get duty-free cars, special development funds. They should not be sitting in all the school boards and hospital boards. Again, I do not know whether in this year-long dialogue amongst the political parties, they have made some commitment that next year, if we have elections, then the MPs will not get duty-free cars, and they will not get development funds, or they will not monopolize the boards of all the various institutions in their constituency. I think apart from this rewards and punishment, a key issue we all know, and Shishir Monir talked about that, is that politics has become a livelihood. And then everybody wants to maintain that financial and security and social status. I think the question is then, what is the limit of the financial security? Financial security is one thing, and amassing fortune, building houses in Canada or Australia, these are two separate issues. So here I think the responsibility is more on the leaders of political parties. Can they somehow, if they think that, no, they don't have money to give to their cadres, that the cadres are free, or the grassroots workers are free to earn their living in doing chadabaji or whatever ways, at least can they put some limits because it is not just that they are earning a livelihood, like any professional. It is not a doctor's salary or a teacher's salary. What they are doing is amassing fortune by abusing power. So what kinds of, it is not only the political leaders, there would be various steps that we can think of because they are breaking laws. And ruling party, whoever is in power is getting away with it. They are not punished even though they are breaking laws. So we need to think of it like this annual statement, which is only bringing transparency, how we can really bring these people who are violating laws, how you can punish them because there are laws which are being broken. So I think, I do not know whether during all this discussion on July Charter, you thought of some kinds of concrete steps, but I think we need to think of very specific actions that will, I cannot say that it will eliminate, but at least limit these kinds of endless greed that of making money through politics. And I found that all the reforms, majority of the reform discussion that has gone on, we have been talking about checks and balances. But it is of checks and balances of or creating a level playing field. But this discussion of creating a level playing field is level playing field amongst prospective parties who will be participating in the elections. But we are not talking about level playing field of candidates, for instance, or who could participate in election. But I think, as Lailufar has mentioned, that, and we all know, that electoral politics is being held hostage to money and muscle power. Only women are not getting nomination because any party leaders openly say you cannot win the election, you don't have enough money, you don't have enough gundas with you, so you will not get, I mean, this I remember one of the former law ministers, but that's the ground reality. So what if we want to make the level playing field for women, minorities, resource poor people? At least previously, during 2005 and 6, we talked about public financing, state financing of parties. If that is not on the cards, then what is party financing? No, if you want to stop nomination, Banijjo. So I think, we need to think, just not all the time talking about the problems, but I think particularly the people who are engaged in politics and are in touch with the ground level grassroots politics, think of concrete ways so that it is really a level playing field for everybody, and not that checks and balance will come through one party leadership group or some negotiations at the back. I think another interesting idea that came out of this discussion is that what this reform process is trying to do is recommend a lot of institutions, that through institutions that you can put some checks and balances. And I think here, our experiences, again, I think our practices have come through our experiences. What we have seen, that we have proposed sometimes good institutions, which might work for 2 years or 5 years, but somehow then the main intention for which this institution was built then gets diverted through either elite capture or certain other kinds of groups. Just the prime example would be caretaker government system, for instance. The intention was that the niyat is it has to be neutral, non-party caretaker government. But if you then want to make itself, we found it didn't work, or it was going down the drains, because attempts were made to make the neutral part partisan. So that so you can have an institution, but you can hollow out the institution by doing mischief with the spirit of that institution. So I think moving forward, when we are making or proposing new institutions, we should keep a little bit in mind our experiences with institutions. The other, I think, recommendation that I see coming forward is lots of recommendations about independent commissions, independent media commission, independent police, independent judiciary. Again, it may sound very nice, but sometimes what may happen that if you have too much of a just your own institutions looking at your own misbehavior, sometimes you sometimes need some other outside also to look at the institution. Sometimes institutional players would try to not punish misbehavior within the institution because institutional interests kick in. So I think that part, that blanket, I find recommendation coming that every sector would have its own commissions, independent commissions, and that will take care of the problem. I think that also is a problem. I will just very quickly go through some of the, in the election cycle, what are some of the practices, undemocratic practices that may kick in, and what we are going to do so first of all, now there will be all the nominations that will come in. And as I mentioned, that whether it is going to go to only people with money and muscle power, because that is our long-standing practice. And what would be the place for the women and minorities and all the other groups. Then I think we need to also see, as Zyma mentioned, during all the pre-election, the conflict for intra-party fights and violence. There would be, I think, all this fear of there could be a lot of violence for nomination itself. And how are you going to check this? Then I think during election campaign, we have seen as from past practice, that instead of having policy debate or debate between, about various programs, the attempt is always to delegitimize the opponent by saying you are an agent of another foreign country. You are trying to sell the interests of Bangladesh to that country. And so that the whole campaign could become even more divisive. And I think we need to think that apart from all the lies and all the character assassination that is going on in the face media, I think our past practice of trying to delegitimize the opponent by just simply saying that you are a foreign agent, whether we will again bring back those kinds of campaign strategies. Then we have talked about, after election, what happens, and then we already talked about the winner-take-all practice. Here, I always have believed that, yes, the winner getting everything, meaning amassing fortune, that I can still live with. But what I cannot live with is the winner getting this opportunity to punish the opponent and not only take the opponent's livelihood, throw the opponent into prison, but also take their lives. So I think until and unless we could think of ways of stopping this practice of punishing the opponent into and eliminating that opponent, we could never really sustain a democratic order. And we will have this cycle of revenge and counter-revenge. And so I do not know how, but again, I think the people who are now going to enter into the political fray, they have to think of ways of at least, as a minimum, stopping this practice of punishing the opponents in this way. And I think also this cycle of revenge politics we need to stop. And then, of course, I think the post-election there will be the problem that losers, our past practice is loser always says that election was engineered. So we should be also prepared for that, that the losing sides will not accept the election. And the question that was, issue that was raised before, and I will say this, of course we expect that the Awami League and Jatiyo Party will not participate in the election, which means a major section of the population or a major political force are not going to be participating in the election. And if post-election, you cannot really expect to keep them out of the field for a very long time. So we will not have peace or any sustainable order if we think that we can keep major political forces from being players in the political field. I would like to then conclude on a little bit in a more optimistic note. And my optimism is based on a number of things. What amazes me is that Bangladeshi people, despite all of our history of continuous breakdowns, people's aspiration for democracy still is so strong that people are continuously aspiring for this. One would think that people would be pessimistic, but they are not. And then I think also if we look at the behavior at the ground level, at the community level, as Zyma mentioned, there is a lot more of tolerance, and there is a lot of social capital there. And so I think the lot of conflict is at the top, who are driving this kinds of practice. And then I only want to conclude on the final comment is that for somebody like me who have lived through, I'm 80 plus, so I have lived through many changes. I have seen the first renewal in 1991. Then I think we had another renewal in 2009 and now 2024. It is not that we lost all opportunities. After every opportunity, we gained something, and then we retained it. We might not have gained everything. Since 1990, military actually had never come in the front. So 1990 was mainly against throwing out the army. In 2006-07, they were in the background, and 2024, they have not come forward. Then I think, so and I think I cannot say what would we keep and what would be the gain from 2024. It is only future which will tell. But I am sure that even though we would not have achieved all the aspirations, we would still gain certain things which will stay with us. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you very much. That was wonderful listening to you, Professor Rounaq Jahan, and very insightful. Lots of thoughts there that we can actually in the future, if we really look into this today's discussion to
take it forward to somewhere, then we have to take some of the points that you very specifically mentioned about the wealth statement issue, the transparency issue, holding the MPs to some sort of accountability and things like that. These are really, really important issues that actually one or two free elections would not solve, definitely would not solve all of our problems. So we have to do all of those things in together. We have to work on all of those things. I really appreciate all of your patience here and your participation. Thank you, panel. Each one of you have had a wonderful contribution, and also the audience, guest, and the co-host, the Norwegian Embassy, Dhaka. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. We'll be having our lunch here today. Oh no, you make the announcement.
Thank you very much for helping me out. So with the elections knocking on the corner, we are actually going to have a very exciting time in the history of Bangladesh after a long time. And our esteemed guests have shared all the opinions that has painted a picture of the reality. And we can hope for the best that's going to come. Thank you so much for your participation. And we can just go for the lunch right now. Thank you.